She was saying, I didn't really want to get married. Like, why do you need a piece of paper? Like, what's the point of marriage? Like, why should I do that? We can just move in together. Like, what's the difference?
Happy Valentine's Day. Welcome to Becoming Virtuosa, the podcast with Dr. Susan Crockett. You are listening to episode number 71, Marriage and Millennials, an interview with an extraordinary millennial, my friend, Andrew Hall.
Welcome to Becoming Virtuosa, the podcast that encourages you to become your best virtuosa self. Each week, Dr. Susan Crockett goes where the scalpel can't reach, exploring conversations about how to be, heal, love, give, grow, pray, and attune. For the first time ever, she's bringing the personal one-on-one teaching that she shares with individual patients to you on this broader platform. A weekly source of inspiration and encouragement designed to empower you. By evolving ourselves as individuals, we influence and transform the world around us. Please help me welcome board-certified OB/GYN specializing in minimally invasive GYN surgery, internationally in the top 1% of all GYN robotic surgeons, a certified life coach, and U.S. News top doctor, your host, Susan A. Crockett, MD.
Welcome back to the Dr. Crockett Show. I'm your host, Dr. Susan Crockett, and I have with me today probably the youngest guest that we've had on the show, but full of such great knowledge and character. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you, Andrew Hall. Welcome to the Dr. Crockett Show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really an honor to be on.
Thank you. So I was talking to you earlier, and we had lunch and had a wonderful lunch together.
Yeah.
I heard you say something about having your own YouTube channel in the past.
Yes. So I used to be a YouTuber back in the day. I think I was in probably 7th grade. I remember at the time I'd see these different like special effects videos on YouTube. And I was like, I want to do that. So I got a green screen. I wanted to clone myself,
That's
like
awesome.
talking, do all that. So it's probably some good blackmail material.
And so it's brought you here to the Dr. Crockett Show.
Exactly, yeah. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, actually what brought you here was the interview I did with Anthony Terry on the Dating Over 50.
Yes, highly recommend, yeah.
It was so much fun. So if y'all haven't seen that video, it was in my first 10, I think. Y'all go back. We'll put a link in the show notes for you. But you had the idea that we should do one for dating under 30.
Yes, actually, I'll give the credit to my mom. So Anthony, he was my dad's surgical tech, Dr. Gary Hall. And that's the connection.
That's how we know, because I work with your dad. And
yeah, exactly.
So one day he was like, oh, you really need to have my son on the show. He'd be great.
I don't think I've ever met Anthony, but my dad's told me a bunch of different stories. Super funny guy. And so we watched the episode. And I think one day my mom was like, hey, Andrew, he should be on the show and he could do Dating Under 30. And I kind of thought, I was like, oh, that's a good idea, but just kind of, chuckled. And then I ended up getting a text saying, hi, reaching out for the Dr. Susan Crockett Show. I was like, oh, I'm on
this
it.
is happening.
Yeah, this is happening.
Because I started thinking we want a diverse audience. We have some themes of the show about helping people become better versions of themselves and making the world a better place, and our little 7 seeds, which are 7 seed colors. But, when we talk about our guests and the conversations that we have on the show, it's important to me that we have diverse groups of people represented. And so I think this idea of talking about the dating scene under 30, even though I'm not in it, is a really important thing for us to bring that up to people's mind, and give a little insight into what you're dealing with. And that kind of morphed into talking about marriage. The topic of the show today is actually marriage and millennials.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your audience may be wondering, why does this 25-year-old who doesn't have a ring on his finger, what does he know about marriage?
That's a good question. Yeah.
But a lot of what I've learned is from people that have way more experience, especially my parents. They've taught me a lot about marriage. And one book that was really informative for me was Tim Keller's The Meaning of Marriage, navigating the complexities of commitment with the wisdom of God. That one is really good for me.
Well, we can put that one in the notes, in the show notes.
Perfect, yeah.
So, what's fascinating to me is so much of what I hear from, you're the generation of my kids. So just full disclosure, I have 4 mostly grown children who are 20, 22, 24, and 26, and they're amazing kids, but none of them are dating at all. And none of them are thinking about marriage at all. They're all in this little space of a little bit of despair about the state of things.
So I dated my senior year of high school and for a little bit, and then graduated. She was a little bit younger than me, so we decided to break up. And then dated my freshman year of college for a little bit. And I think when I got to college, that was the first time that I really started thinking about my future. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, I was like, oh crap, like what am I going to do with my life? And
right.
I think at the time I was business pre-med, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my dad being a doctor, wanted to kind of try that out. And so I was really focused on, okay, I'm here for school, I'm here for academics, I'm on a mission. And I felt like a lot of dating that I saw seemed like people were just wearing rose-colored glasses and it was all superficial. And so I was kind of jaded, I guess.
That's interesting, yeah.
And then kind of toward the end of college, I had a pretty powerful experience. Had a close friend of mine that committed suicide.
Oh.
And it really just caused me to kind of re-examine my life. And, I said I was a Christian, but I started kind of looking how I was living and just thinking about what happens when I die. And that experience really kind of brought me closer to God. I grew up in the church, but after that experience, I felt like God became really real to me and scripture really spoke to me and became my experience. And so kind of towards the end of that, I wasn't really focused on relationships. I was more focused on my faith. And then after I graduated college, I was kind of thinking, well, if God brings someone, perhaps I'll be open to that. But now I'm kind of like, you got to put your faith in action. You got to pray and you got to look. You got to, someone's not just going to go poof.
Yeah. You got to be actively you have to put yourself out there and be in an environment where you would meet them.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you mean by the mindset habit? Is it part of that?
I definitely think the mindset that you have going in, I think your mindset is very powerful in every aspect of life. Mm-hmm. I think with dating, having the right mindset of what am I looking for and what am I doing? And I think that's really important. And I think a lot of people, dating's kind of something that is fun and
social
yeah. So I think having an idea of, going into it, what am I looking for? I think that's really important. And sometimes you don't know necessarily what you're looking for, and you have to figure that out. So I think that plays a piece there too.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed in dating, especially incorporating online dating, is that there's such a diversity now of people. Like when I was in college and dating, it was a pretty homogenous faith. We all ate the same type of food. Mm-hmm. Not that we all had similar faith. I certainly had diverse friends, but when you met somebody, there was not so much trying to sort out the details of their preferences and their mindset and how they think.
Yeah. That is one interesting thing about online dating. For a long time, I was pretty, I guess, apprehensive to online dating. I didn't want to do it. I had all reasons why I didn't think it was good. I was kind of anti-social media and just seeing smartphone dependency and
certainly an issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I remember my older brother and his wife, they got married this past August and they met online through an app called Coffee Meets Bagel.
Interesting.
It's kind of a funny name. But so I decided to kind of be a little bit more open to it. And one thing, I think it's a pro. Some people could be more critical of it, but on online dating, you can typically most apps have, what's your religion, what's your core beliefs and things about what's most important to you. You can find people that are aligned with you from very, very core fundamental beliefs. And I think
that's helpful.
Yeah. So you have a little bit more, you kind of know what you're going. It's not a blind date totally, but.
So do you find that people in your age group are looking for marriage?
That's a good question. I think they are. It is very interesting looking at the statistics. So if you look at around, I think 1950, the median age for men and women was about 23 and 21. And then if you fast forward to about 1970, it's about 24 and 22. If you go to 1990, it's about 27 and 25. Now it's about 31 and 29. So it's going up about a year every decade. And I think a lot of people their idea of marriage has changed. I think historically, especially when our country was more religious, marriage was in the context of religion, of it's a lifelong covenant between a man and woman before God. and it's something that is for raising families and producing a functioning society.
Yep.
I think
Always.
now, as people have become less religious, marriage has also changed how people look at it. So it's kind of more focused on where can I find personal fulfillment and self-satisfaction, and how can this person support my goals? And so I think what you're finding is people have these kind of unrealistic expectations of marriage. And because of that, they're kind of disappointed in their partner because their partner is a human being and
it
not
doesn't
perfect.
meet all of their everything. They can't be their everything.
Yeah. And I believe that our satisfaction is ultimately found in a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And if you look to an imperfect person for that satisfaction, you're going to be disappointed. And so I think people are looking to alternatives, whether that's cohabitation or, some people. I remember there was a coworker of mine. I was listening to her conversation, and she was talking about she and her spouse got married, and she was saying, I didn't really want to get married. Like, why do you need a piece of paper? And it was just interesting that her view was it's a piece of paper, and she thought, like, what's the point of marriage? Like, why should I do that? We can just move in together. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah. And
I think there's kind of a much different view largely today than 50 years ago.
Well, just speaking from my own personal experience, my background, I don't know if y'all know, but I was married for almost 30 years to two different men, and I've been divorced twice. And my first husband, who's the father of my children, passed away of a heart attack it's been 6 years now. So I function mostly as a widowed family, a single mom and the only parent to my kids. And my views have changed. So I was raised in a very Christian household, very conservative. Actually didn't have sex with my first husband until we were married, which even back then was very conservative. And I went into it with the same views that you're talking about. In fact, I wrote a book about Christian marriage and all of that. We're not going to talk about that because I've got some different views now, so we're not advertising that. But I totally understood the spiritual side of it. The spiritual side, meaning the connection between man and woman becoming one, the religious side, which is the structure of the church and the functioning of the family within that structure, and the legal structure of it, which is the piece of paper that you're alluding to. And now that I'm in the position that I'm looking through this in hindsight, I still love the spiritual and not so much the religious. My worldview for religion has expanded. I'm still very much a Christian at my core, but I like to say love draws a bigger circle, and I've expanded my ability to love all different kinds of cultures and people in that way. But I still would love that spiritual oneness of a marriage. I'm still looking for it, but the legal stuff is just ridiculous. And so for me, it's not the piece of paper that I want. It's the piece of paper I don't want, because it caused me so much pain, the legal part of being married.
Yeah. Whenever I've met a lot of people that are divorced, and you hear the statistics of, 1 in 2 people go through a divorce that are married.
Yeah.
There's so much hurt, and I think, there's the economic ramifications of the, legal costs and all of that, but just the emotional hurt and there's so much that you go through with that. And that's something that I think for me, really, I put a lot of thought into thinking about marriage and finding the right partner, because the pain and the suffering that comes from divorce, I can only imagine.
Well, in the spiritual part, the spiritual divorce was difficult because that's loss of oneness or loss of relationship. But the legal and the financial part of divorce is what makes me not want to do it again. It was, if you separate out the emotional, spiritual part of marriage from the legal marriage, which is basically a business contract, the business contracting of marriage within our society it's like having two businesses join, and unjoining those businesses is really, that's a separate issue than the whole spiritual demise of a marriage, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at it now. People say, do you want to get married again? I'm like, yeah, but not legally.
Yeah.
Or maybe I do, maybe with the right person, with the right legal protection in place. But that never would have been me 30 years ago. I never would have thought that I needed to protect myself from the person that I loved and adored and was marrying to. I know your generation sees through this lens of seeing my generation going through divorces and yeah. What does your generation say about not having the piece of paper? I'm wrapping back around to where this part of the I digressed. Where this digressed from was your friend who's like, I don't want the piece of paper.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people are looking for alternatives. And I think a lot of people think, oh, cohabitation, we don't have to do all of the legal hurdles and we can just, and, if it doesn't work out, we can just, part ways. It's kind of a try before you buy.
And that's not the answer
mentality.
Either.
I would agree. Yeah. I think, because marriage at its core, when you look at it, like what's the origin of marriage? And I would say it comes from scripture, the Bible, it's very interesting if you think about reading a book, if you want to get the gist of it, you could read the first 2 pages and the last 2 pages. Marriage is mentioned at the beginning of the Bible and the very end of the Bible when you have the creation of Adam and Eve. That's kind of the first marriage that talks about a man will leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and the two shall become one. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the Bible, you see this marriage supper of the Lamb of Christ and the church. And that's kind of the transcendent meaning of marriage, that God became man so that he could have oneness and unity and we could be reconciled back to him despite us being, sinful and rebelling against him. I think that's the most beautiful thing of marriage. But anyways.
So that's more of a unification between the spiritual realm and our physical realm, like our soul and our physical reconciling to God.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that you have the kind of the physical institution of, man and woman, but there's also it's kind of a drama that portrays, Christ coming down, sacrificing himself for the church, for us. And then the church being presented, holy and blameless. There's a great passage in Ephesians that talks about that.
The bride and the bridegroom. The bride being the church and the bridegroom being Christ.
Yeah, exactly. And that wonderful call that husband and wife, the husband can love his wife as Christ loved the church, laying down his life for her, and this sacrificial love and commitment to her. And, the wife trusts and, loves her husband to lead her and to guide her. But anyways, the digression from kind of alternatives of cohabitation, where I was getting at was marriage inherently is this promise that till death do us part. I'm going to love you thick and thin, rich or poor, healthy or sick. And you don't have that if it's let me just try it out and see if it works out, just in case, if we're compatible.
What if because when you get married, you have a religious ceremony if you're in a religious congregation, and then you have the legal paperwork, right? They're two separate things. What if you just did the religious one and didn't do the legal one?
That's a really interesting idea. I think another question comes to mind of, who has the authority to mandate a marriage? Is it the state or the church?
Right.
That's a cool...
Or just the two people between themselves.
Yeah,
even.
or just you. We're making this covenant, this promise between each other, death do us part. I think that is a very interesting alternative.
I'm not advocating, by the way. I'm just throwing ideas out and deconstructing the whole marriage thing. And I'm throwing it at you because I'm curious about, your generation. Yeah. And so I think that is a very different thought than we'll just try it out and cohabitate thing. Yeah.
I think what I've seen a lot is I feel like it's probably more common, my generation, of kind of cohabitation. I think, though, there's this longing kind of for, like, when I hear different stories of people saying, we're high school sweethearts, that's such a rare thing. But I think more and more people are longing for that. And there's that intimacy and knowing each other
long term and the trust connection.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have your back, do or die,
Yeah, yeah. I know with online dating, it's how a lot of people meet. There's different dating apps out there with different kind of cultures and mindsets of what you're looking for. So it really depends kind of what you're looking for, I think.
You can find a place to meet your people.
Yeah.
In some place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about your generation's thought about health and diet and, the worldview, how society and economics are changing so much. Like there's so much that your generation has access to think about and choose from that our generation didn't have until now. We have it now and we're adapting to it. But tell me about how that influences your dating. You mentioned that you had been vegan or vegetarian in the past.
Yeah. I've really experimented when it comes to eating and diet. I remember in high school, I got into working out because I wanted to become better at basketball. And then eventually I got into it so much that I stopped playing basketball and just worked out. And so I think that was kind of my first attempt at trying out fitness and prioritizing that. And then I think when I got to college, I tried a lot of different things, keto, vegan, intermittent fasting. Now I'm kind of more whole foods and focusing on the quality of the food. But when it comes to, I think, eating and dating, diet and dating, that would be an interesting book title.
Right? There you go.
I think just the overall mindset with millennials, I think there's a lot of kind of looking for different preferences. And I think it comes, like the thing that I'm thinking of is with work-life balance. That's kind of a millennial thing. Yeah. And a lot of the boomer generation, all these millennials know how to work hard, and they have a point. And I think there's a lot of, with dating, it's kind of like, how can I design the perfect relationship or fitting all my criteria? And that fits with dating apps. It's like, okay, I want to find someone who eats this way, believes this, does that, checks off all these boxes. I have this list. Oh, they check this list. All right, I'm going to match with them. Yeah. So it becomes a little bit, what's the word? Inorganic. Like sometimes you can't just label people.
You can't choose what love's going to find for you.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And sometimes I think I think being aligned on certain things is important, but there's going to be other things that, you see things differently. But I think diet is becoming more and more of a bigger, I think it's an important thing for me I would want to be with someone who prioritizes health and fitness, that wants to live a healthy lifestyle.
Because you want them to be with you for a long time, right?
Yeah, we want to enjoy life together for a long time, have health and longevity, all of that. Yeah. And I think that's more than just what we're going to eat for dinner. It's a whole mindset thing. Yeah. How can I live a life that's healthy, and how can I live a life that's, getting rid of the bad things and the toxic things? Yeah.
And you have such awareness and you're so articulate. I've just loved our interview. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
You want to tell our folks how they can find you?
Yeah, sure thing. You can find me on Instagram. That's Andrew Hall 122998. I need to get a little more creative with that. And then I also recently started writing on Medium. You can find me Andrew Hall 1229. And then I also write a little bit for an organization called the Washington Stand, and that's washingtonstand.org.
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, guys, thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed Andrew's conversation with me, please like, share, and subscribe. Those are the 3 words I always have to remember.
Yes.
Hit the like buttons below. And if you have ideas for us about what you want on future shows, please drop me a comment. Tell me what you think about some of the things we talked about. I look forward to seeing you next week on Tuesday. Take care and have a wonderful week. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Becoming Virtuosa. To learn more, come visit us at drcrockett.com. That's drcrockett with 2 T's.com. Or find us on YouTube for The Dr. Crockett Show. If you found this episode helpful or think it might help someone else, please like, subscribe, and share. This is how we grow together. Thanks, and I'll see you next week. Love always, Sue.